Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Anders Bergstrom. I'm a director at Hauser & Wirth. I run the editions program. I'm on the board of IFPDA and sit on Judy Hecker's board at Print Center New York. So I'm especially honored to be here today for this talk on the IFPDA Book Award. Margaret Lowengrund, a model workshop, was a major exhibition at Print Center New York in 2023, and with the show came a thoroughly researched scholarly exhibition catalog co-curated by Rosenblum and Christina Weyl. A model workshop explores the generative legacy of Lowengrund, a visionary artist, advocate, and entrepreneur. In charting the history of the print workshop gallery, she founded the Contemporaries and later its evolution into Pratt Graphic Art Center. A model workshop brings into focus the bustling printmaking scene of the 1950s New York and Lowengrund's impact on postwar printmaking. Lauren Rosenblum is the curator at Print Center in Philadelphia and candidate in art history at the Graduate Center, City University of New York. Christina Weyl is an independent scholar and curator. She is the author of Women of Atelier 17, Modernist Printmaking in Midcentury New York. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage and congratulating them on the IFPDA Book Award for 2024.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anders.
Oh, you guys are at the podium.
Yeah, we're going to be at the podium together.
Okay.
Right. So, we'll get started.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much, Anders, and thank you to the IFPDA Foundation for this award. We're both really thrilled to accept the book award for a model workshop, and together we served as co-editors of this publication and co-curators of an exhibition of the same name, which took place, as Anders mentioned, in the fall of 2023 at Print Center New York's ground floor space on 24th Street. We are very grateful to the entire team at Print Center New York for their help in realizing this project. And we also want to thank the book's 5 essayists who share this award with us.
Our talk today will provide an overview of the catalog and a window into the exhibition, which together sought to bring to life a moment and space of sociality and creative exchange, which has largely been forgotten and overlooked in the history of mid-century printmaking. I will speak first about Lowengrund's professional experiences and how they led to her synthesizing a new model for the Contemporaries. Afterwards, Christina will recount highlights from the institutional history of the Contemporaries and Pratt Graphic Art Center and how these catalyzed the development of contemporary printmaking. And finally, we will provide a brief recap of the book's 5 essays and discuss how last fall's exhibition dovetails with the scholarly work reflected in this catalog.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to tag team, and it's going to be a bit of a sort of art historical lecture, and then I think we're going to take questions at the end also. So a model workshop, Margaret Lowengrund and the Contemporaries, explores the generative legacies of Lowengrund, who was a visionary artist advocate, and her hybrid gallery workshop. Over its first 15 years, between 1951 and 1966, the Contemporaries and its successor institution, the Pratt Graphic Art Center, which we'll refer to as PGAC, supported and inspired countless artists who arrived from New York City from all over the world seeking to train in the graphic arts, to join a creative community, and to exhibit their work in contexts emphasizing the primacy of printmaking. Although Lowengrund's direct involvement with the Contemporaries ended in 1957 with her premature death, her founding vision and aspirations continued to carry a significant impact in the New York art community. In her lifetime, she touched countless artists, curators, and dealers active in the burgeoning field of postwar printmaking, and the course of PGAC's first 10 years of activity and programming reflect the continuation of her influence. Lowengrund pioneered we should change and have our friend Margaret here. Lowengrund pioneered a model of a printer publisher that was ahead of its time and hugely consequential to the history of graphic arts in the United States during the 20th century. With this project, when this project began in April of 2020, I remember calling you in the middle of the lockdowns, being like, "Do you want to work on this project with me?" We both had an awareness of Lowengrund and of her hybrid gallery workshop, and we knew that there was more of a story to tell. Initial major funding from the Getty's paper project allowed us to grow this project in scope and ambition, and we're very thankful, as we said, to Midcentury New York for their partnership and unwavering support. So we want to begin by telescoping out to emphasize why Lowengrund and the long neglected contemporaries were so deserving of a major survey. Most historical accounts of the 1950s describe the decade as sort of devoid of any printmaking activity. And the standard narrative implies that the founding of several collaborative printmaking workshops stretching from the late 1950s through the 1960s, including Tamarind Lithography Workshop, Universal Limited Art Editions, Gemini Gel, and Crown Point Press, sparked this resurgence of interest in printmaking, which is variously called the print boom or the graphic revival. A model workshop brings into focus a picture of a bustling printmaking scene of the 1950s that largely contradicts these accounts. Our deep exploration of archival material shows that the print boom was seeded at least a decade earlier, and that the Contemporaries was central to sparking this surge. A model workshop describes the interest in contemporary printmaking that took shape across the 1950s as a slow and sometimes circuitous crescendo rather than a burst of spontaneous activity. Indeed, this project contends that Lowengrund's unwavering advocacy and her hybrid gallery workshop were both vital precedents and catalysts for the collaborative workshops and the printer publishers that proliferated and profited during the 1960s. Lowengrund has at times been positioned alongside June Wayne and Tatiana Grossman as one of the three enterprising women who spurred the explosion of the collaborative printmaking workshops during the 1960s. And interestingly, these women's activities are often always described as being independent of one another in these geographic vacuums. Grossman was out on Long Island running ULAE, Wayne opened Tamarind Lithography Workshop in Los Angeles, and Lowengrund was operating out of New York City. But new archival discoveries for a model workshop reveal that, for the first time, Lowengrund served as a foremother for both Wayne and Grossman, whom she knew and inspired with her advocacy. It's worth briefly mentioning that Wayne was closely associated with the Contemporaries. She participated in several group shows and had a duo exhibition in 1953, which featured lithographs such as Witness 1 from her Justice series. And when Lowengrund died, Wayne mourned the loss of both a friend, an artist, and a fellow print advocate. This void no doubt affected her decision to approach the Ford Foundation in 1958 for a major grant to establish Tamarind, which opened in 1960, and itself reshaped the landscape for lithography in the United States. Tatiana Grossman, who was the founder of ULAE, jettisoned her initial plans of making screen-printed facsimiles, perhaps inspired by Lowengrund's active exhibitions program and the market she was growing for contemporary prints. Universal Limited Art Edition's inaugural edition, which is Mary Callery's Sons of Mourning, this very long, skinny print, was exhibited in 1955 in the Contemporaries' swanky new ground floor space on Madison and 77th. And you can see in the photograph at the lower right, it's just underneath the window. So with that, I'm going to trade with Lauren, and she's going to talk a bit about Lowengrund.
From its inception, the Contemporaries was an unprecedented enterprise, and our project maintains that Lowengrund was uniquely suited to launch her venture that fused production, exhibition, and sales of modern graphics under one roof. Its mission and operation were expertly built upon her nearly 35 years of experience. During this period, work as a painter, a printmaker, and illustrator brought her into traditional academic print shops, European ateliers, shared artist studios, and modern art galleries where she gained practical knowledge and formed a creative vision for her novel endeavor. In witnessing these workshop models, Lowengrund learned the practicalities, like how to set up the physical space of a studio wholly dedicated to production. She observed how its rooms were efficiently organized to hold materials ranging from toxic chemicals to delicate papers, as well as a large press, or two, if lucky, and used for specific graphic processes. Concurrently, she saw the print studio as an emergent site of socialization, with artists and printers clustered in tight quarters, sharing creative ideas, solving technical problems, and addressing socio-political concerns. And lastly, Lowengrund accrued pertinent insights into the financial viability of a print studio while circulating within the New York art world, a nationally networked community of print advocates dedicated to promoting a largely disregarded medium. She leveraged the totality of these experiences towards the founding of the Contemporaries, a commercial gallery with a focus on both production and sales, unlike any that had come before it. Is it a little echoey? Is it a little echoey? The course of Lowengrund's artistic career tracks many of the broad changes and dominant aesthetic trends as they emerged from the creative circles in which she moved. Starting in the 1920s as an art school student and young professional, her creative output, lithographs, etchings, as well as sketches for newspaper illustration, mirrored the transformation of the contemporary artist into a mobile observer of modern life and city architecture. Lowengrund grew up in middle-class Philadelphia family of German-Jewish origin that fostered her pursuit of the visual arts. She began a traditional art education in 1921, studying illustration at the Philadelphia School of Design for Women. 2 years later, she transferred to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, one of the country's oldest and most prestigious art schools, where women, though few in number, were attending, teaching, and exhibiting. While still a student, Lowengrund started publishing illustrations in the Evening Public Ledger in a regular column called Just Little Sketches Round Our Town. She continued to work as a newspaper and magazine illustrator for years to come. And just as an aside, we saw numerous examples of her illustrations, and they all showed an attention to detail and a kind of liveliness that really gave us a wonderful view into her kind of artistic eye as a young person. In the fall of 1924, Lowengrund moved to New York City and enrolled at the Art Students League, where she remained until spring 1926. It proved to be fortuitous. Only 2 years prior, the school had invited esteemed printmaker Joseph Pennell to revive its etching class and to establish one in lithography, a rarity even in New York. In a newly outfitted workshop, which you see here, he established a modern pedagogy in the graphic arts through an apprenticeship model, whereby students worked alongside one another and the instructor. Lowengrund captured this studio dynamic in a lithograph that conveys concentrated dedication to print production. Further, Pennell charged his students to learn every step of the process for both etching and lithography, insisted on practical knowledge accrued through visits to an industrial lithographic plant, and encouraged experimentation with commercial ink and etch recipes, all of which represented a stride forward in how artists in the US learned printmaking. Like a vast stride, let me emphasize. This really was an inflection point and for the growth of the artists in their capacity to image and make at the same time. Lowengrund continued her study of lithography at the Central School of Arts and Crafts in London, where she enrolled in the spring of 1926, and while abroad, painted among modern artists of Paris. Returning to New York in 1928, a solo exhibition of intaglio prints at the Kleeman-Thorman Galleries showed abstracted and geometricized facades of Manhattan's ascendant skyline, capturing from increasingly dramatic perspectives. It was a bold announcement of her new direction in modern printmaking. And it was wonderful to have an opportunity in the galleries to recreate the kind of breadth and her attention to this subject matter in such detail, and the way she was able to bring formal innovations that she had absorbed from being abroad into her work in print. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. That's what it looks like to present it. And you can see the way she absorbed and then released some of Pennell's influence. So this was on one wall. Only a year after Lowengrund's debut exhibition, the stock market crashed and set off a widespread economic crisis. The United States was a changed place. Building upon experiences in the educational print studios of her youth, Lowengrund became a participant and leader within several important artistic communities during the tumultuous decades of the 1930s and 40s, from the idyllic artist colony in Woodstock, New York, to the politically charged urban milieu of the Works Progress Administration's Federal Art Project. And again, we had this wonderful opportunity within our exhibition to present this evolution at a fast clip through really strong examples of her stylistic changes, some ephemera that captured her work in journals and illustrative works, as well as nod towards her work in painting as well. In a significant development, she was hired to work in the Graphic Arts Division in 1936, the year its studio opened in Manhattan. Paralleling shifts in her political beliefs, her artwork moved increasingly away from etching and toward an almost exclusive focus on lithography, which had a newfound association with leftist activism. And like many artists of her milieu, Lowengrund's preferred subject matter turned to the afflictions of working people. The lithograph loading bricks, made while on the Federal Art Project, presents a frozen tableau of factory workers organizing the product of a mechanized kiln. The federally funded print shop presented Lowengrund with yet another model of workshop, this one attempting to maximize the employment of artists working in a small space by requiring them to develop imagery and mark the matrix in their personal studios, and then visit the government shop to work alongside the in-house professional printer in running the edition. While this collaborative relationship was already quite familiar to Lowengrund, it was new to many artists who made their first prints in this space. It set a widely adopted precedent that continued into the following decades. While the Graphic Art Division's workshop was a hub for politicized printmaking, it was also a site of concentrated technical innovation, of which you know there were many different innovations. There, Lowengrund in particular honed her knowledge about the developments in color lithography, exemplified in interior of the brickyard. She soon taught a course intended for both beginner and advanced students alike in the subject at the New School for Social Research. In a promotional poster, a disembodied hand of a printer grasps the press's lever in preparation to lift the scraper bar, an instance of the laboring hand moving in symbolic solidarity with all craft workers. The New School was founded on progressivism and had long been a home for political expression. And in honor of this institutional imperative, it hosted events by external organizations, including the American Artists Congress, in which Lowengrund was an active member. In this large group worked to support the mandate of the US Communist Party's Popular Front initiative that aimed to rally radical and moderate leftists and unify socioeconomic classes against fascism under the broad banner of cultural democracy. While Lowengrund's party membership card is not extant, scattered documentation registers her participation throughout the 1930s in arts organizations that further clarify her political values. She exhibited with an American group, a selective membership organization comprised mostly of leftists, contributed illustrations to Art Project Reporter newsletter distributed by the Artists Union, a trade group representing the collective labor interests of the WP artists, and a 1939 commission to execute a mural painting in the barroom of the New York Labor Temple, a community center for organized laborers on Manhattan's Upper East Side, resulted in 3 vignettes showing the delivery of beer barrels to tables where they are drunk in good spirits, the union workers, that is. Only 2 years after the birth of her daughter Linda in 1934, Lowengrund and her family relocated part-time to the rural artists' colony of Woodstock, New York, approximately 100 miles north of the city. Over the course of the following 23 years, through the depths of the Great Depression, the turmoil of World War II, and the solace of a post-war nation, she cultivated an active civic and cultural life in Woodstock. Her membership in the Woodstock Artists Association shaped the ensuing direction of her career. It served as a central hub of social and intellectual activity and was a major site of exhibitions for a large creative community of artists working in various media and competing styles. And I think we had, over the course of our research, encountered a handful of photographs of Margaret, and were really special ones were the ones of her working in the Contemporaries. But in my mind, this photo, for me, evokes what she might have been like if she were a person who I got to meet. And we spent so much time working on this material and reading her writing that it was nice to have a face, a warm face to put to a name and letters. While Lowengrund's work in graphics tapered during the 1940s, her ongoing commitment to the craft of lithography and its spaces of production is captured in a photograph taken in the basement of the Artists Association in Woodstock. Rather than the bustling studios of her past, she is alone pulling an edition of her river Traffic with the commanding New York City skyline that recalls the 1920s etchings and her work as an illustrator in its stylized placemaking and narrative detail. By the dawn of her commercial venture in 1951, Lowengrund had spent her artistic career absorbing lessons from myriad printmaking workshops and artists' organizations that had introduced her to varied models of collaboration and print production that would become significant to instituting the Contemporaries. Through academic training and professional experience, she became an accomplished printmaker. Furthermore, she was keenly attuned to debates surrounding the function of various print media, from rarefied objects for elite consumption to images for mass distribution, and aware of the avenues for their dissemination into the commercial marketplace. Her experiences had also embedded her into a network of like-minded practitioners who had become significant to her new endeavor. Lowengrund ably transformed these experiences into a new role as a business owner, a gallerist, and a workshop director, which Christina will share more about.
Okay, I'm back. So we're going to go on and see how Lowengrund absorbed all these various models from her time in the WPA and as a student, and came up with her own and innovative synthesis. So our project took its title from a model workshop from a term that was used in the Art Digest to describe the Contemporaries in 1954. So we thought that was a sort of fun title, and we thought a lot about models. What was Lowengrund trying to do? Did that model work? How did she adapt and change? So Lowengrund opened the Contemporaries as this hybrid gallery workshop in December 1951 in a second-floor space at Madison and 75th Street. The initial announcement card, which you can see here at the top, broke down this dual purpose. The dumbbell-shaped space had a room in the back where Lowengrund moved her own lithography press and put other equipment. In the front room, which had large windows facing Madison Avenue, Lowengrund organized a gallery which offered, and you can read in the signage, original etchings, lithographs, and woodcuts by America's finest graphic artists. As a longtime observer of and participant in the American art scene, Lowengrund sought to disrupt the status quo with the Contemporaries. So its unconventional and hybrid structure was the first institution in the United States to fuse the production of prints with the exhibition and sales all under one roof. The strength of Lowengrund's enterprise was in its synergy of creative energy and commercial sales. By fusing these two functions in one location, Lowengrund built a powerful center which drew a diverse audience. In addition to serving artists who wanted to make and sell prints, the Contemporaries provided a vibrant venue for artists who wanted to connect with one another and who wanted to meet museum curators, critics, designers, architects, and collectors. For the sake of clarity, I'm going to just briefly touch on the activities of the workshop and the gallery separately, even though these entities really were working together and were mutually reinforcing. Lowengrund had really big goals for this teeny tiny little space at 959 Madison, and she had a very, very small budget to do what she did. The workshop coalesced around three functions: access, education, and professional services. Lowengrund facilitated the ability of contemporary artists, regardless of their background or education or specialization as painters, sculptors, or printmakers, to learn and experience with all kinds of printmaking. She offered contract printing services at competitive rates, and her workshop became known for the staff's ability to execute color lithography. The workshop also held public-facing events such as demonstrations or periodic open houses where the public could come and watch the creation of a print alongside curators and critics. Although the workroom had an etching press and a setup for screen printing, lithography was given primacy, reflecting Lowengrund's own long-standing passion for the medium. And she actually served as the workshop's first professional printer in a role where she modeled this sort of balanced, collaborative relationship between artist and printer that she had lamented was missing from the 1940s landscape. One of the first collaborations was with the artist Edward Millman, for whom she printed a handful of editions, including the one you see here, Laughing Bug, which was the bonus print given to members of the Woodstock Artists Association. Lowengrund eventually hired and trained other artists to serve as master printers. Michael Ponce de Leon, who you see in this photograph, became her first printer during the summer of 1952, when he worked out of the basement studio where the Contemporaries relocated seasonally each summer for the first couple of years. And Ponce de Leon famously printed David Smith's first lithograph, which you see here on the right, using beer because there was no running water in the basement of the Woodstock Artists Association. That must have been a really fun time. The early workshop printers also included Joseph Munch, Adji Junkers, Warden Day, Siang Moy, and Reginald Neal. Turning our attention from the workshop to the gallery space, Lowengrund began her exhibition program modestly, but eventually developed a very robust calendar of exhibitions. The Contemporaries changed shows roughly every 3 weeks, which was pretty typical of galleries of this time. Between 1951 and 1957, when she sold the gallery just before her death, the Contemporary hosted over 100 exhibitions featuring at least 250 artists. The publication that you'll be able to see includes an index of every known exhibition that took place at the Contemporaries. The early exhibitions at the gallery explicitly favored group shows over solo shows because Lowengrund believed that this sort of collective display of many artists would reinforce the quality of what the Contemporaries was showing. When she did do solo shows, they were mostly duo shows where she would show a work in one medium and work in another medium. So you would often have prints next to sculptures. She would often also have thematic shows for artists of a particular region or an international focus on artists from another country. But her major contribution was a semi-regular roundup, which she called the Graphic Outlook, which was a roundup of the best graphic arts of the year prior. These ambitious exhibitions presented a cross-section of contemporary graphic arts in a manner commensurate with the post-war print annuals that were being held at museums and at print clubs. And in our exhibition, we recreated a portion of the Graphic Outlook 1955, which traveled to at least 11 venues from Kansas and Minnesota, Missouri, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. So she really got the work out to many places. But she couldn't cover the rent for her space with modestly priced prints. So the gallery's program of solos often featured exhibitions including sculpture. So when Lowengrund moved the gallery from the tiny dumbbell-shaped space in the September 1955. She cemented the alliance of the graphic arts with other media by branding the Contemporaries as a gallery of sculpture and graphic arts. And at points, Lowengrund had important sculptures on consignment, such as this David Smith Agricola 5, and sold important works to collectors of sculpture, such as Joseph Hirshhorn, who bought several works by Jose de Kreeft from Lowengrund. Two changes fundamentally reshaped the Contemporaries between 1955 and 57. First was its relocation from 959 Madison to become two separate spaces. One was where the Mark Hotel is now at Madison and 77th, and then the other space was 3 blocks away on 3rd Avenue at 77th Street, which is where the workshop ended up. And the second really big change was the merger between the Contemporaries and the Pratt Institute, coupled with a major grant from the Rockefeller Foundation. Through this expansion, the mission remained true to Lowengrund's founding vision to foster an appreciation of printmaking among artists through classes and professional services, and to engage with the public through exhibitions, sales, and education. The Rockefeller Foundation first learned of Lowengrund's hybrid workshop around 1954, around the time that she was confronting the need to move from the first location. The foundation staff was very impressed with Margaret and with her enthusiasm and her knowledge, but immediately they raised red flags because Lowengrund did not operate a nonprofit, and the Rockefeller Foundation could not fund a workshop that was for profit. So after many, many rounds, Lowengrund was just in an awkward position where she couldn't receive funding from the Rockefeller Foundation, but they then bridged this gap with the Pratt Institute, but said that she had to dissolve the relationship between the workshop and the gallery. So ironically, the thing that made Margaret's workshop so special, this hybrid entity so special, this merging of contemporary printmaking and sales, had to be separated in order for it to continue. As all of this was taking place, Margaret had to re-envision what the Contemporaries was doing without Rockefeller support, so she embarked on this move without Rockefeller Foundation grant, and eventually, through a lot of back and forth, they became the Pratt Contemporaries Graphic Art Center. With this merger, Margaret became a co-director with Fritz Eichenberg, who was faculty at the Pratt Institute. He had been plotting on his own to open a graphic arts workshop since joining Pratt as faculty, and he jumped at the opportunity to partner with Lowengrund. As with many business mergers, there were a lot of bumps in the road and growing pains. The largest stumbling block came with Margaret's untimely death in November 1957. Eichenberg became the sole director and immediately faced challenges on multiple fronts. The Pratt Contemporaries was effectively transitioning from this hybrid model that we've talked about to a new educational paradigm. On paper, the center was supposed to be a combined school and workshop, providing classes 2 days per week in all printmaking media at a graduate level. And simultaneously, it set out to serve professional artists as a center for experimentation and edition printing, and to organize traveling exhibitions and local exhibitions. I mean, it was a lot. When you read the grant application for the Rockefeller Foundation and you see all the things that Fritz Eichenberg was promising to do with not a lot of money, it's just overwhelming. But he adeptly navigated the center through these first 3 rocky years and negotiated a second major grant from the Rockefeller Foundation, and which facilitated a move to a much larger space down at 795 Broadway. So this move inaugurated a new era for the Pratt Graphic Art Center, which dropped Contemporaries from its name. PGAC, Pratt Graphic Art Center, excelled in inviting and attracting an international mix of artists who were curious to explore the potentials of printmaking. To facilitate this, Eichenberg raised money to offer scholarships to artists from countries across Europe, Latin America, and Africa, as well as India, South Korea, and New Zealand. And he took a lot of pride in welcoming these artists to the city. All told, there were 61 artists from 28 countries, and he called this mix a love fest. Edition printing for professional artists, particularly in lithography, represented another lucrative income stream, and momentum grew over time. Arnold Singer, who had been on staff when Lowengrund was still alive, remained the primary contract printer until 1966, and he was joined by Andrew Stasek, who assumed increasingly more administrative duties for PGAC. Visiting printers were also in residence at PGAC with additional funding through various initiatives of the Rockefeller Foundation. Many Japanese artists offered demonstrations and taught classes, which is something we explored further in the catalog. They additionally, I feel like, we're just like listing all these things, but it was really a vibrant center. PGAC also published a semi-annual magazine called Artist Proof, which captured kind of this broad spectrum of activity in the print world in the 1960s. There are little articles about centers across the world, printmaking centers across the world, exhibitions that were happening, spotlights on particular artists. I mean, if you've never read these, they're kind of a really amazing way of getting a sense of what was going on in the 1960s. So do pick up a copy if you can find one. And the exhibitions program developed and raised awareness about this global community of contemporary printmakers. When the center moved from 795 Broadway to 831 Broadway, it had dedicated exhibition space. So this turbocharged the exhibitions program. Initially, it featured faculty, students, but eventually they curated their own shows and they sent them out broadly, not just in the United States, but internationally. So they were very busy. The most consequential aspect of the exhibitions program was the spotlight on international artists. So they would highlight centers in Germany, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Canada, England, Japan, Holland, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia. They were just everywhere. They had arms everywhere. Margaret Lowengrund would have heartily approved of PGAC's international focus, its community building efforts, and outreach to bring new artists to printmaking. Certainly, PGAC maintained the Contemporaries' openness to working with any contemporary artist, no matter what their style was or their background and familiarity with printmaking. And this is perhaps best illustrated by 100 Contemporary Prints, which is a major exhibition and retrospective for the PGAC and Contemporaries at the Jewish Museum, which we recreated partially in our exhibition. It included people from the old guard, from the Contemporaries, as well as emerging tendencies in post-war art, including pop and conceptual prints by artists from the United States, Latin America, and Europe. So, for 30 years, until its closing in 1986, PGAC welcomed artists from all over the world who were curious to try their hand at printmaking. By the end of his tenure as director, Fritz Eichenberg established this equilibrium, balancing the center's mission to be a school and a professional center, once writing that it was a first aid station for artists who had just gotten off the boat or the plane in New York, but it was also an experimental station for artists who wanted to resolve some kind of technical problem that they wanted to figure out. We hope that this research on Pratt Graphic Art Center and the Contemporaries will spark more people to research the 1950s and 60s and open us a dialogue about Lowengrund's enormous impact and her legacy for post-war printmaking studios.
All right, just to round it out for just a few more minutes. We conceived of the publication in tandem with the Midcentury New York installation. At once, we challenged ourselves to create a show that rematerialized an overlooked history of objects and exhibition making. At the same time, we considered how the publication could fully account for this vibrant center of creativity and the important individuals who contributed to its continual evolution. With 79 prints, 1 sculpture, 1 film, and an abundance of ephemera, the exhibition presented 3 major acts that illustrated this dynamic history. The first displayed the arc of Lowengrund's career as it mirrored the shifts in aesthetics and preferences for technique during the earliest decades of the 20th century. I'd like to say it was like a survey of the history of printing on 2 walls. The show then exemplified how the contemporaries championed modern printmaking by combining the depths of print collections, combing the depths of print collections to illustrate works by its master printers, and it recreated one of the many national survey exhibitions that brought together the most innovative artworks. Finally, it charted the institutional evolution into Pratt Graphic Art Center and again recreated an exhibition of works produced there to demonstrate how contemporary printmaking had changed from the 1950s and 60s. The book functions at once as an exhibition catalog by discussing Lowengrund's vital contributions in great detail and richly illustrating many of the objects displayed at the Contemporaries. We also envisioned it as a foundational document on printmaking at mid-century and made space in our page count for the attendant themes that this history demanded, given the dearth of scholarship about this specific period. Essays for a model workshop proceeded in roughly chronological order. It features 2 anchor texts from us that introduced Lowengrund and her institution's history that was just reflected in our presentation. There are also 5 shorter think pieces, we called them, by contributing authors that situate Lowengrund and the contemporaries among significant trends of the period, including the relationship between illustration and print, the rise of female gallerists, the changing post-war art market, the centrality of Japanese artistic exchange during the 1950s, and the rise of conceptual printmaking in the 60s. Ellen J. Benjamin provides insight into Lowengrund's little-studied but extensive work as an illustrator and critic, noting how the artist was persistent across her career in making her voice and opinions known through her art and writing. Gillian Russo situates Lowengrund among female gallerists who increasingly dominated the post-war art scene. Sarah Archer contextualizes Lowengrund's outreach to interior designers and decorators within the post-war housing boom and the push to bring contemporary printmaking to middle-class homes. Noriko Kuwahara charts the many instances of exchange between Japanese printmakers and the Contemporaries and Pratt Graphic Art Center, highlighting the mutual benefits to Lowengrund and the artists she supported. Finally, Rachel Vogel considers PGAC's, Pratt Graphic Art Center's, generative legacy among the cohort of Latin American artists who founded the New York Graphic Workshop and pushed the definition of contemporary printmaking into a conceptual direction. Along with this catalog's, these essays, the chronology assembled for this publication maps this institutional history for the very first time. On behalf of Christina, we would like to thank again the IFPDA Foundation for the award and providing us the opportunity to share our work with this audience, with you all today. We welcome you to stop by Midcentury New York's booth at C43 after this talk, where we have some signed copies of a model workshop, and we will continue any conversation that we start here now, and we welcome your questions.
Hi. Didn't you give a talk on Margaret 2 years ago here?
We did indeed. It was for the exhibition.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
for Print Month.
Yeah. When did Pratt Graphics move to the space on Broadway and 13th Street? Because I took a course with Della Monica in '69, and so
I think at that point it would have been at the larger space at 831 Broadway, if that
Right.
address, it's only like it moved like 2 blocks
Right.
up. But the space at 831 was much larger.
and the Madison Avenue address,
Yeah,
was that where the Whitney wound up?
no. So it
across the
is the
street?
block north of where the Whitney ended up. It was a sort of row of brownstones. There are a couple of other photographs in the book. And that whole building, that whole series of buildings was torn down. And then it got one of those post-war white brick apartment buildings. The Whitney moved in across the street. But the space that's at Madison and 77th is now where the hotel, the Mark Hotel is with the restaurant. So
Because
when-
when the Whitney moved downtown, the Met took over, you know, and the wonderful thing about it was that the Whitney, designed by Breuer, he had something in his contract that it couldn't be anything other than a museum. I just found out it's no longer a museum. It's going to be an auction gallery, which I don't know how they did that.
I don't know how Whitney did that.
I know, but this kind of, in speaking with you, this brings to mind a wonderful circumstance of working on this project was that not only did we get to meet Margaret's family, but we've met and spoken with many graduates of Pratt Institute, people who were only just one generation away, children of artists who exhibited there, community members who still feel very aligned with the Pratt graphics community, artists who are continuing to practice. And it felt very much like a living history, that this is a network of folks who are not far away from it. It's the recent past, and that there is this kind of investment in these spaces, this community, and this way of working.
How much history did you do in terms of Woodstock? Because an uncle of mine had the news shop up in Woodstock in the 50s. And we have some work of his, of Marion Greenwood. Did she do printing or just...
I think Marion Greenwood was one of the Woodstock artists.
She was.
Yeah.
We did a fair amount of research in Woodstock. We have a very lovely relationship with the Arts Association, and they were lenders to our show, and they allowed us into their archive, which is wonderful. We also scoured lots of, it turns out, so we didn't get into this, Margaret also participated in her community as a radio host and an author. And her work, we looked at a lot at the Woodstock local public library. We looked at a lot of newspapers. We scoured them page after page, like into the night, looking for traces of her. In Woodstock, we went to the Historical Society.
And you would be surprised, I didn't know this, that, all the newspapers, there were like 5 dailies in Ulster County, and they're not all preserved in their entirety. So we know that there are gaps where we couldn't find bits and pieces of Margaret's writing.
Woodstock was known as an artist colony, all the... but in terms of newspapers, the store was in the center, right where the triangle is, and it was the kind of glass set back. And on Sunday, you couldn't see into the windows because 6 feet on both sides was the Sunday Times.
Are there any other questions from anybody else?
Hi, thanks for the talk. It was great. I was really interested in how hands-on Margaret Lowengrund was as a printmaker. Did she facilitate a lot of editions herself, or was it more about running the workshop and the gallery?
Well, she definitely worked as a printer, but as with everything, I think there were demands pulling her in different directions. So and there were different revenue streams. I mean, I think this is something that is eternally a problem for university print shops, for-profit printmaking workshops, like where's the money going to come in? And so at one point towards the end of her life, she also thought about editioning sort of a print of the month, publication, which she kind of sketched out the artists who she wanted to participate. Not all of those were made, as far as we can tell. But yeah, she was very actively thinking about printing editions, if that answers your question.
Can I also prompt Christina? This also, one of the things that we thought a lot about is like who gets to write these histories, and we did a lot of archival research and looked at a lot of collections of letters among primarily men, and they had a lot of opinions about the quality of her printing and whether or not she was a good printer, and we're very clear with one another in considering her lesser than some of their male peers, and I think it kind of it was like it helped us remember to keep perspective about her and her capacity. We looked at many prints that she editioned, and they looked amazing. And we also have to remember that by the time a lot of these men were writing in the 1960s, what was considered a fine or like well-printed impression had changed so much with all the research that was being done into inks and registration and the kind of mechanization and of production, that when we look back at these 50 prints, and you really got a sense of that in looking at, like, say, the graphic outlook recreation, like these were the best prints, and the quality of them, and we see that here in the fair too, the quality of what artists were trying to accomplish is just a different quality in aesthetic and appearance, and making the prints work, you know, meant something entirely different. And all of these questions for us came up as we were putting together, and this was not a historiographic project about assessing the quality of her work, but rather acknowledging that this history was there and these conversations continued even after decades pass.
If I could just ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
To your point, when I first heard of Margaret Lowengrund, I was looking her up on Wikipedia. There was no entry. Mm-hmm. And it's probably your book and your research and your show that prompted, I'm assuming, the entry. But there is an algorithm defect for a lot of women, not just in the arts, but in politics, etc., that tends to push aside. So that was interesting what you were saying about the diminishing of her, this sort of male, whether or not she was a good up to par, and how that perspective changes over time. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, we were privy to like internal documents at the Pratt Graphic Art Center afterwards, and she had not been gone for more than 6 months before people were saying, you know, she was having children's classes in PJC studios, and this is just said with such like disdain. I can't believe she would do that. But you think about it now, and you're like, it's so brilliant. You know, she's maximizing the space and the money and the profit and all this stuff, and it seems so stupid to denigrate, you know, kind of a brilliant mind of thinking, how am I going to keep the studio going? Any way you can. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming.